Okay, so let's have some examples for slope and intercepts of a line. So for our first example, find the slope of the line containing point A with coordinates -2, 3, and point B with coordinates 6, 1. So we all know that if we are given 2 points on the line, then we can easily solve for the slope by using the slope formula. The slope formula is given by m for slope is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So of course, in this formula, x sub 1 should not be equal to x sub 2, because if that happens, then the denominator of the formula will become equal to 0. So in that case, a number divided by 0 is undefined. Okay, so in the problem, we are given points A with coordinates -2, 3, and point B with coordinates 6, 1. Okay, so now we're going to assign x sub 1, y sub 1 to one of the 2 points, and of course x sub 2, y sub 2 to the other points. So here, if you're solving for the slope, it doesn't matter which of the given points is labeled as p sub 1 and p sub 2. Now suppose we assign x sub 1 to -2 and y sub 1 to 3 and x sub 2 for 6 and then y sub 2 for 1. Then from the given, we have this value, we also have this value. What else? We also have the value for x sub 2 and of course the value for y sub 2. Therefore, we can now solve for the value of m. So by substitution, we have m is equal to y sub 2 is 1 minus y sub 1 is 3 all over x sub 2 is 6 minus x sub 1 is -2. Okay, so to easily identify the coordinates, so let's just enclose each value with parentheses. Okay, so we have here m is equal to 1 minus 3 all over 6 minus a -2. So simplifying the expression, so we have 1 minus 3 all over 6 minus a -2 is 6 plus 2. So we have 1 minus 3 is -2 over 6 plus 2 is 8. And -2 over 8, when simplified, so that's equal to -1/4. So therefore, the slope of the line passing through points A and B is equal to -1/4. So that's the slope. Okay, so let's have another example. For example number 2, which of the two lines is steeper? Line L sub 1 with a slope of 2/5 or line L sub 2 with a slope of -1/2. Now here, if we're going to determine which line is steeper, so we have to disregard the sign, because to determine the steeper line, we're going to, or we will just get the absolute value or the absolute values of the two given slopes and compare the two absolute values. Okay, so the one with the higher absolute value is actually the steeper line. So if we're going to write the given, the slope of line L sub 1 is equal to 2/5. Okay, so the slope of line sub 2 or line 2 is equal to negative 1/2. Okay, so which one is steeper? So for the two slopes, just get the absolute value. So just get the absolute value of m sub 1, and that is equal to 2/5. And the absolute value of m sub 2 is, of course, the absolute value of negative 1/2, or that is equal to positive 1/2. So if we're going to compare 2/5 with 1/2, then we can see that 1/2 is greater than 2/5. Therefore, so since the absolute value of m sub 2 is greater than the absolute value of m sub 1, we can now conclude that, or we can say that L sub 2 is steeper than L sub 1. So line L sub 2 is steeper. Okay, so we have this statement here. Okay. Okay, so let's have our third example. The slope of a line or line segment is 2/3 and one endpoint is negative 1, 4. What are the coordinates of the other endpoint, which is on the x-axis? So here, we are given a line segment with a slope 2/3. Okay, so we have a line segment whose slope is 2/3 and one endpoint is negative 1, 4. So for the solution, so we can actually try to sketch the graph. Or we can try to plot the given point. So since the slope is equal to 2/3, then definitely we should know that the line is inclined to the right. Okay, so since the slope is 2/3, positive yan. So that means the line is inclined to the right. Or since it's a segment, so the segment should look like this. Okay, so it is inclined to the right. So now, for this segment, so if we're going to sketch the or make a representation of the problem, so yung negative 1, 4 is, so suppose this is point negative 1 on the x-axis. It's negative 1. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So negative 1, 4 is found here. And since it was mentioned that the other endpoint is on the x-axis, so let's say this one is our line. Okay, so According to the problem, one endpoint of the line segment is on the x-axis. So, of course, if we know or if the point is located on the x-axis, then we should know that the y-coordinate is 0. Okay, so for this one or for this point, its coordinate should be x comma 0 because every point on the x-axis, the y-coordinate is always equal to 0. So we don't know the value of x here. So to determine the coordinates of that point on the x-axis, we need to solve for x. Okay. So now, for this one, we have x and 0 as the coordinates of this point here, and then this point is -1, 4. Now, since we are given the slope, so aside from visually looking at the graph, so pwede nyo rin gamitin yung slope formula dito. Okay? So again, the slope formula is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So that's the value of the slope m. Okay? So here, if we're going to assign x sub 1 for -1 and y sub 1 for 4, and for this unknown, so we have this point here, so we can assign x to be our x sub 2 and then 0 to be the value for y sub 2. And since the slope is 2/3, then we can substitute the values. So m is equal to 2/3 is equal to, we have y sub 2. What is our y sub 2? So it's equal to 0 minus y sub 1 is 4 here. This is our y sub 1. So 0 minus 4 all over our x sub 2 is the unknown x minus x sub 1 is equal to -1. Okay? So if you notice, you only have one variable left on this equation. Therefore, it's possible that we can solve for that unknown. So simplifying our equation, we have 2/3 is equal to 0 minus 4 is -4 over x minus a -1 is x plus 1. So how do you solve for x here? We can cross multiply, or we can multiply both sides by the LCD. Okay, so cross multiplying, we have 2. Let's continue our solution here. So we have 2 times the quantity x plus 1 is equal to -4 times 3. So it's like multiplying both sides of the equation by 3 times x plus 1. So let's simplify this one. 2 times x, that's 2x, then 2 times 1, that's equal to 2. And this should be equal to -4 times 3, that's equal to -12. Okay, so we transpose +2 to the right side, or we just subtract 2 from both sides of the equation. So since we are solving for x, then we need to isolate x from the rest. Okay, so 2x plus 2 minus 2 So that is just 2x is equal to negative 12 minus 2, that's negative 14. Okay, then to solve for x, so we divide both sides of the equation by 2. So we have for x, that's equal to negative 7. Okay, so since we are required to determine the coordinates of the other endpoint, which is on the x-axis, then we must show our answer as an ordered pair. So since x is negative 7, then the endpoint which is found on the x-axis is the point negative 7, 0. Okay, so this will be our final answer. Okay, so another solution here is you can just use rise over run in your graph. So suppose you opted to use a graph. So just like what we did, we plotted the 2 points. Okay, so from negative 1, 4, you can use 2/3, which is the slope, to locate another point. So for 2/3, you can go down or move down from negative 1, 4. You can move down by 2 units and then move to the left by 3 units. And then, of course, you're going to repeat the process until such time you will get to the x-axis. So I think you have to do it twice. So go if you're going down by 2 units here, so negative 1, 4. If you're going to count 2 units down, you will have negative 1, 2, and then 3 units to the left, you will locate. So if this is 2 and then this is 3, what point is this one? So halimbawa, bababa tayo ng 2 units dyan and then 3 units ito. So it should be, so this level is 2 on the y and then 3 units to the left of negative 1. That's negative 4. So you can locate here negative 4, positive 2. But since hindi pa 0 yung y coordinate nito, then you're going to repeat the process. So from negative 4, 2, you go down by 2 units. So since the y coordinate of this is 2, and if you're going down by 2 units, then you will be at the or on the x-axis. So and then move 3 units again to the left. So negative 4 minus 3. So you will get negative 7, 0. Okay, so that's another solution. Okay, but for easier solution, sometimes if you're going to make use of the 2/3 ratio, sometimes hindi eksaktong lalapat kayo doon sa x-axis. So, minsan lalampas siya. So, in that case, gagamit kayo ng ratios ng mga fractions. So, the best solution would be to solve for to use the slope formula. So, gamitin nyo na lang yung slope formula. And then, see to it or see if merong may iwang isang variable lang. Okay? So, that's for example number 3. Okay, so let's have our fourth example. Determine if points A, B, and C are collinear. So here, we are to determine whether the 3 points A, B, and C are collinear. So when we say collinear, so collinear points are points that lie on the same line. So for example, if this is point A, so let's say this is point A, this is point B, and this is point C. then they are collinear if they lie on the same line. Okay, so to determine whether these 3 points, A, B, and C, so suppose this A, and then you have B and C. Okay, so to determine whether these 3 points are collinear, then we just have to solve for the slope of the line passing through points A and B, and the slope of the line passing through points B and C. And then after solving for the slopes, we have to compare the two obtained slopes. And if the two slopes are equal, then we can say that the points A, B, and C are collinear. So for our solution, we can try to determine first the slope of the line passing through points A and B. So we can label as the slope as M sub AB. So let's say our x sub 1 is negative 4, and then this is our y sub 1, that's 1, negative 1, and x sub 2 is negative 2, and y sub 2 is equal to 1. So by the slope formula, we have M sub AB is equal to y sub 2 is 1 minus y sub 1 is negative 1 all over x sub 2 is negative 2 minus x sub 1, so that's negative 4. Or we have 1 minus a negative 1 is 1 plus 1 all over negative 2 minus negative 4, so that's plus 4. And simplifying this further, we have 1 plus 1, so that's equal to 2 over negative 2 plus 4, that's also equal to 2, and 2 over 2 is equal to 1. So we have the slope of the line passing through points A and B is equal to positive 1. So now let's try to solve for the slope of the line passing through points B and C. So we write M sub BC. Okay, so for the slope of the line through BC, so suppose our x sub 1 is negative 2 and y sub 1 is assigned to 1, and the x coordinate of C is x sub 2 and 5 is y sub 2. Then by the slope formula and by substitution, we have M sub BC is equal to y sub 2. So that's 5 minus y sub 1. That's equal to 1. All over x sub 2 is 2 minus x sub 1 is negative 2. Or we have 5 minus 1 all over 2 minus a negative 2 is 2 plus 2. Or we have 4 over 4. And 4 over 4 is equal to 1. Therefore, the slope of the line through points B, C, or B and C is equal to 1. And since M sub AB is equal to M sub BC, which is both equal to 1, we can now say that points A, B, and C are collinear. Okay, so that's for example number 4. So again, if you want to determine whether the 3 points are collinear, just solve for the slope of the line passing through a pair of points. Okay, so just pick any pair of points from the 3 points, and then after that, compare the computed slopes. can actually solve also for the slope of the line passing through points A and C here. And you should get also the same value, which is equal to 1. Okay. Now let's have our example number 5. So for example number 5, we're going to get the intercepts of a line. So particularly the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So for the x-intercept, so the x-intercept is the point on the x-axis where the line crosses it. And when we say y-intercept, it's the point on the y-axis where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay, so that means since the intercepts are part of the coordinate axis, then one of the coordinates should be equal to 0. So for example, for the x-intercept, since it's part of the x-axis, then we can say that the y coordinate is equal to 0. Whereas for the y-intercept, since the y-intercept is found on the y-axis, then definitely the x-coordinate should be equal to 0. So now, if we're going to solve for the intercept, so let's have first yung first equation natin. We have negative 7x plus y is equal to 4. Okay, so suppose we are to determine the x-intercept. So we need to get the x-intercept. So what's our first step here? So since the y-coordinate of a point on the x-axis is equal to 0, then to determine the x-intercept, we just need to set the value of y to 0. Then after setting the value of y to 0, we solve the resulting equation. So when y is equal to 0, we will have equation negative 7x plus 0 is equal to 4. Okay. So we are left with a single variable x, or we actually have a linear equation in one variable x. So we can now solve for x. So we have negative 7x is equal to 4. And if we divide both sides by negative 7, then we will get x is equal to negative 4 over 7. Therefore, the x-intercept is the point with coordinates negative 4 over 7, 0. So that's the x-intercept. Okay, so I wrote it as an ordered pair. Okay, so we pair negative 4, 7 with 0 y coordinate. So it's the same as covering the y term in the given equation. So for example, in this equation, if I want to solve for the x-intercept, then I can simply cover the y term. Okay, so if you remove the y term, you will have the equation negative 7x equals 4. And so we can solve for x, which is equal to negative 4 over 7. So solving for the x-intercept, we just have to cover the y term, because the y term or the value of y is equal to 0. So it's like covering the y term of the equation. Okay, so how about the y-intercept? So let's find the y-intercept. So for the y-intercept, we have to set the value of x to 0. So when x is 0, we will have equation negative 7 times the quantity 0 plus y is equal to 4. Or we simply have, so this becomes 0, simply have y is equal to 4. Therefore, for the y-intercept, it's now the point with coordinates 0 for x and 4 for y. So this is the y-intercept. Okay, so for the x-intercept, the y-coordinate is always 0. For the y-intercept, the x-coordinate is always equal to 0. So it's like covering the x term. So to solve for the y-intercept, just cover the x term. So ang maiwan lang dyan is y equals 4. Okay, so let's have the second equation. The second equation is x over 3 plus 5 equals 9. So what can we observe from the given equation? The given equation has no y term. So x lang yung nakikita natin. So what did we say about lines with no y term? About the graph of the line. So the graph is a vertical line. So if you only have the variable x in your linear equation, then the graph should be a vertical line. And of course, if the graph is a vertical line, it is parallel to the y-axis. Or sometimes, it could be yung y-axis mismo kapag you have the equation x equals 0. But here, we don't have the equation x equals 0 for this given. So that means our resulting equation is parallel to the y-axis. So let's see kung ano yung makukuha natin mga intercepts. So if we're going to start with the x-intercept, so again, we set the value of y to 0. But in our given, since wala naman siyang variable y, then we simply have the same equation, which is x over 3 plus 5 is equal to 9. Okay, so solving for x, so we subtract 5 from both sides. So that's the same as transpose natin yung 5 to the right side. So we will have x over 3 plus 5 minus 5 is 0 is equal to 9 minus 5. So that's equal to 4. And after that, since we're solving for x, we multiply both sides of the equation by 3 or by the LCD, which is 3. So we have x is equal to positive 12. Okay, so that's the equation, x equals 12. This is actually a vertical line which passes through point 12, 0 on the x-axis. So for the x-intercept, we can now write the x-intercept as the point with coordinates 12, 0. Okay, so now if we're going to sketch the graph of this one, we're going to sketch the graph of x equals 12. So if you have the x-axis and y-axis, and let's say this is 12, then the graph looks like this. So it's a vertical line passing through x equals 12. Okay, so this is the graph for x is equal to 12. And as we can see, the line is parallel to the y-axis, and by observation, it will never cross the y-axis. So therefore, this equation has no y-intercept. The line has no y-intercept. How do we check? Algebraically. So, di ba kapag ka nagsusolve tayo ng y-intercept, what do? We set the value of x to 0. So we are setting the value of x to 0. Now, if we do that, if we make x equal to 0, so magiging 0 to. So, ang maiwan lang sa atin, so mawawala itong term na to, ang maiwan lang is 5 equals 9, which is a contradiction. So, it's a false statement. So, therefore, you cannot really get the value for y. And since our equation has no y term, has no y variable, then it's impossible to solve for a y value. Therefore, the given line has no y-intercept. Okay, so that's it for the slope and intercepts of a line.